Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Wellness Blueprints, Nourish Your Roots with Jess. I'm Jess Milner. Thank you so much for being here today. And all right, so I want to talk a little bit today about quantum healing and the importance of it. And I know I've talked about this before, but really, your body stores emotions and, all these energies, these emotional energies they'll store these things deeper than you think inside of your body. And I've had multiple different patients and clients over the years that until we've started to do some sort of quantum energy healing, they were just not able to get over, that healing hump, if you will. They were kind of stuck. They've plateaued. They can't seem to get any further. Um, you can store things like fear will be stored like in your lower back. That's usually there in your kidneys. Worry, anxiety, that's going to be in your stomach and everything, and grief, of course, up here by your heart. So when you have symptoms that keep on returning, or you just can't get through stuff, or maybe something hurts in your back, and like you're like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. No, something that we used to do all the time, because I worked as a nutrition response testing practitioner, or muscle response testing, whatever you want to call it. There's a couple of different labels for what it is basically, but when I was practicing in New Jersey, when people will come in and go, oh, like I slept on my back wrong, my shoulder wrong, or something like that, we're trying to figure out what's going on here. So we would, push on their arm and push on the area. Okay. And of course it would go weak because there's something wrong there, right? Like something, something in the body there was just, everything hurts, right? So they would push on that. And then while they were pushing, we would have them do different things with their fingers each time that we push to figure out if it is structural, if it's neurological, or if it's emotional. Sometimes it was all of them. Sometimes it was one or two of those things. And then we would know, okay, let's test the supplements that are going to handle that. And when it was emotional, sometimes we could do something like, some cell core ME support, or some standard process min checks. There were plenty of things, maybe some ashwagandha, some kava, something like that for part of the emotional aspect. But really, the emotional aspect needed to be something that was going to go in there and acknowledge what was there and get it out of there. Because if it's emotional, then that means that there is an energetic emotion, like the size of like a softball, that is sitting there getting in the way of stuff. So it doesn't really matter what you do to try and make it better, to try and numb it, because it's not going to go anywhere unless you get that part of it done. Now, this has been spoken many times over in terms of quantum healing and quantum medicine, that we all have this energy around us, permeating us and surrounding us, that actually holds the blueprints to our physical body. So this is really what we're talking about here. So that's the thing. Western medicine, as necessary as it is in so many cases, it skips that. You might find a couple of doctors that are like starting to, get more on board with it, but for the most part, they just kind of scoff at it, and they're like, whatever, if you want to do that, that's fine. It's a placebo effect, whatever. Okay. But the thing about placebo effect is, I mean, that's one thing people have said to me. Oh, it sounds psychosomatic, and it sounds like a placebo effect. And I'm over here, and I'm like, you know what? Who cares? If somebody feels better, and whatever it was that was going on is no longer an issue, even by Western medical standards, who gives a shit if it was a placebo? If it was just something, oh, it was in your head. Oh, Meanwhile, how powerful is your mind? How powerful are your beliefs if something is just your belief that is taking care of it? I mean, that is the power of it. So then we're talking about these beliefs, and people have been talking, limiting beliefs, like Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about this all the time, and we talked about this on here. There are limiting beliefs that we hold that we don't even realize that we have, that keep us kind of stuck. Like, I'm always going to be ignored. I'm always going to be um, I'm always going to be sick. Like I'm predisposed to this, all these different things. So, we have these limiting beliefs, and we have these emotions that don't get fully processed, because I mean, life is stressful and we can't always fully process everything. Sometimes it's just too much, and we're in a situation where we can't just, go and have like a nice cry and let all of these things out, like a little kid can't really hold it in. So they want to just, cry everything out. They can't hardly breathe. They cry it out. They need some comfort. And then they're usually pretty good. They cry that all the way out. As an adult, like, I mean, if you cry it all the way out in the bathroom at work, I mean, sure, that happens. But like people are like, oh my gosh, did you hear about Jess? She went cray cray and she is like in the bathroom having a total nervous breakdown. Is she having a nervous breakdown or is she just like working through an emotion? So, it's just different when we're older. Like if you're in the grocery store and you just want to like, people don't really like that. So we have a tendency to push these things down. And the thing is, these emotions that we have that we want to release, they are like branched off and getting stuck on these even deeper core misunderstandings that we have in all of our energy centers. They're like kind of, they're branching off of it, kind of standing in the way of it, in the way of us realizing, that we don't have to believe those things, that we don't have to believe we're always going to be sick. We don't have to believe that we're not safe here. You know, these are just things that we decided to believe when we were very little because, from a childlike understanding, we had to make sense out of something. So we decided something as a little kid. And now, as an adult, we're looking in and go, okay, well, we don't have to believe that anymore. But we don't realize that we have that there. And then we have these other emotions that build up over top of it. So that's really where, like my quantum frequency blueprint really comes in, especially with the blood work and everything, because I can see between the blood work and what's going on, what energy centers are having the most issues. And if you've been working with me with energy work, with emotion code, body code, prior to that, I'm like, well, wow, look at that. This is exactly where like most of your emotions are concentrated when we are releasing them because they want to hang on to there in this, it's like a weaker area of your energy, if you will. So Western medicine, it's kind of getting halfway there. It wants to just kind of like numb the pain, But I've given the example before with the gal that she had, the stomach issue. She wasn't able to eat meat. Everything was going really well, and then she started working with me with emotion code. We started getting rid of those emotions, and then she was able to eat meat again. And not only that, but she was able to eat it again, and it was not bothering her. So, like it wasn't like, oh, I ate a little bit and I had a little heartburn. No, no, no. Like she was good to go. She took it slow at first because, that's what you do. Because it'd been like a year since she was eating, I think it was specific to red meat. She was not my nutrition patient. She was my emotion code client. But then I had multiple people, they would come in and say, yeah, this knot in my back, I really just can't get rid of it. I'm like, okay, well, every time that we tested, it is coming up that it's, it's also emotional. Sometimes it was structural, sometimes neurological, sometimes both of those. But whenever there was an emotional component to it, and the patient didn't want to do an emotion code, didn't want to do anything with that. They're like, I don't really feel like, like they didn't want the extra cost. So sometimes I would just be like, okay, we're just going to go in and I'm going to like release one or two emotions real quick during your session here, during your nutrition appointment. And then, they would come back, for their next follow up a week or 2 weeks later and go, I definitely want to schedule a full emotion code because that was the first bit of relief that I have had. Even though there was, well, maybe not the first bit of relief, but the first like actual full relief. Okay. Because lots of the other things we would do, there are plenty of different supplements and exercises that you can do, stretches that you can do, ice or heat, there are things that can be done, of course, to get rid of like an ouchy back, a knot in your back, and a lot of those things are very effective. And typically these things will heal themselves over time if given the right, rest and all those good things. But when they're coming in and it's still bothering them after all this time, we got to dig in and go for the emotional, that energetic side, because it really is even more important than the physical side. Because once again, that blueprint that your spiritual body has is what, like just like architect, there's blueprints for a house and then they build it. So you have to have those blueprints there and you want them to be as perfectly flowing and great as they can be. So, what we're doing when we are releasing these emotions, we are making more room in the meridians, in your energetic pathways for things to flow more freely so that health can follow. Okay. Health and healing will be able to follow. Health and healing have more of a chance of becoming the dominant thing rather than feeling sick all the time. So, we're releasing these things. And, I used to say it all the time too, releasing things that no longer serve you. And it's not that you're not doing that because you are releasing things that no longer serve you, but because at one point or another, these emotions, at least in your mind, in your perception, these emotions were necessary. They were justified. Um, were they justified because they were actually justified, or were they justified because they were very familiar to you? And that's where it gets kind of fuzzy because, if you're angry, if you're prone to anger, you have a lot of anger, like, bunched up there, then you're more likely to feel angry when a situation presents itself that could possibly make you feel angry. So you might think that you're justified in being angry, but it's not really that you're justified. It's just that you were so used to feeling that way that it just feels right. So there's a little bit to be said there with the perception, with that human, like, conscious versus subconscious mind there. But what we're doing, releasing things that no longer serve us, yes, but really what it more is removing things that are not you. Because those emotions, if they weren't completely, like like if you've ever heard like somebody say, okay, like if you can stop and think for a couple of seconds when you're really upset about something, are you going to still be mad about this in a year from now? Is it still going to matter? And if the answer is no, then you probably shouldn't like go bananas and let your nervous system get all like cranked because because of something like this, like it's really not that big of a deal. We can't always stop and do that. Right. Sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. But it's a nice thought to be able to do that. So sometimes it's just not, it's not necessarily justified in the way that you think it is. It's just because like you're so used to feeling that particular kind of feeling. And it's almost like your mind, your body, like your consciousness is like tricking you into thinking that this is how you actually are. And it's not how you are. That is not your true self. It's not your true essence. I've talked about that before, where we are shedding what's not actually us, what's not contributing to our true essence, and then that helps us to be able to realize what these misunderstandings are that we have, so that then we can actually truly work through to correct those. And then things just have a different perception and outlook after that, when you can really, because then you really start to look at things more objectively, and you realize that some of the stuff that you've been trying to do, you're like, okay, well, it's not really me. And it's not to say that like the things that you were doing are not like super important, because like we got stuff to do, and we're doing great things for ourselves, for our families, for the world. um but it's really just getting to that root in terms of emotions, in terms of energetic pathways, getting to the root of what's going on physically. And that's where, Western medicine is just like, nah, not really so much. There's, like I said, they're starting to get a little bit more acceptive, just a little bit more. But, that mind body connection, that mind body spirit connection, this and really quantum medicine, quantum healing, this is definitely going to be more prevalent in the future, because what they did was, for a long time, it was mostly this type of stuff. Like homeopathy would fall under like a frequency medicine kind of category. And prior to what was it, like 1915, something like that, there was a lot of homeopathy. There was many of the hospitals were homeopathic hospitals. They thought they looked at everything and they said, okay, so there is, this vital life force, and we can do all this stuff with science, but we can't create this vital life force. So something has to be there for that. So they were still acknowledging that. And then one day, they managed to create life from nothing. So then they decided that the vital force was not important anymore. They started to do just the pharmaceuticals and go in, and I'm really, really like condensing this. Like if you want to go down a rabbit hole, but I'm really condensing this down. But basically, all of these homeopathic hospitals were closed down. Some people, when I was working in New Jersey, when I would give them some homeopathic remedies, they were like, I don't really know about this. I've heard blah, blah, blah. I've heard that it can be harmful. I've heard that it doesn't do anything. And I was like, well, it can't be harmful and do nothing. So you have to pick one. It's either harmful or it does nothing. So pick one. They're like, well, I could drink the whole bottle and nothing would happen. Okay. So, I'm like, so, like, is there really a risk? And different homeopaths will tell you different things, because yes, you can prove the remedy and stuff like that. But I would always tell them, because in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, there is a hospital. I think it might have completely turned over at this point, but it's called Hahnemann Hospital. I actually had one of my girlfriends had one of her kids there. And that hospital was a homeopathic hospital. Hahnemann, I'm not remembering his first name now, but he was like one of the fathers of homeopathy, especially in it, like especially like he did a lot of homeopathy. He was great at what he did, and he had all these hospitals, and that's how people were treated, because they were working on that, innate force, that little, that, that life force there. And then, they changed everything over and like pushed out all of those. But I said, that hospital, it's Hahnemann, like that's named after a homeopath. Like this used to be exactly how we did everything. So to just kind of like ease their minds that, like this wasn't always taboo, but they decided to make it taboo so that they could bring in the new. And the truth of it is, we do actually need both. So, do we need everything from the Western medicine side? Probably not, or maybe not in the intensity, but some of the advancements and things that they are doing, with the different types of surgeries and the life-saving things, fabulous. But a lot of it, has gotten like super amped up. And it's that quantum healing that we need to come back to, and just go, okay, so we shunned this for a while, but as it turns out, this is actually important and there is room for both of it here, right? So you want to make sure that you are covering any emotional, energetic aspects of your healing as well. So, and this is wellness blueprints, and this is the type of thing that we talk about here. So, I would like to invite you to please go ahead and download my emotional balance toolkit. This is a fabulous, I think it's about 8 pages. It's got some different things that you can implement right away, no matter where you are, to calm yourself down so that maybe you're not getting quite so much, you're not getting quite so overly emotional. I carry around a copy with me. I've got it in my truck. So, and it's things that you can do anywhere. You don't need a fluffy pillow. You don't need to be out in the wilderness. You don't need to be like singing in a field of daffodils or something like that. Nothing like that needs to be happening. You can implement this pretty much anywhere and people won't even know that you're doing it. Okay. And it's going to be something that's an amazing tool. So you're going to go to go.deeprootedwellnessid.com/balance. It's just $7 and it's yours to keep. So by all means, go ahead and grab that. And if you are interested in an emotion code or body code session so that we can see what's going on and what we can release that is not you, that's no longer serving you because it was never you, just head over to my website, deeprootedwellnessid.com, and you can book your sessions right there. If you want to get a 3 or a 6 pack, you save $5 per session doing that, and they won't expire. Okay. So let me know if you have any questions. And everyone who is celebrating this week, we've got Passover, we've got Holy Week. So there's all kinds of stuff going on, and there's been some beautiful springtime days. And I hear there's some areas of the country that are also still pretty cold. So your warmth is coming, I promise. I'm probably going to get more snow here in Idaho. It's been beautiful for a few days, but you never can tell. Uh, but thank you so much for stopping by today. And I want to remind you that your quantum healing is very important. It's important to you, it's important to me, and it's important as a whole because it is part of your full health. It's part of that health plan, that health care that you want to give yourself to get it's for you and your family to be healthy. It's part of that. And I am here for you. All right. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Bye for now.